Heroes! It is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. We were talking about equipment, and I'm going to finish up talking about that today, and move in to start talking about combat, because that's a very important thing to talk about anyway. So, for equipment, I wanted to talk a little bit about lifestyles, because this is not necessarily paying for a lifestyle for a period of time. These are things that are based around your lifestyle you would purchase. The first is housing. Housing tends to be very expensive, but it is definitely something you can purchase some of. Those are more of a long-term investment in lifestyle. On the short term, there is the price of meals and transportation and the like, which you could also purchase. They have purchase DCs too. Moving on from there, let's talk about services, because this is paying people to get a service. These are the most important services you're more than likely going to encounter. Of course, your game master could come up with some more of them if it would be appropriate to your game. The first is auto repair. This is going to depend on how much damage the person is repairing on your vehicle, how much damage has taken, and repairing that much will increase the purchase DC, the amount you'll have to pay to repair it. Then there's bail bondsmen. This means if you should get caught doing a crime and end up in jail, they bail you out so that you can be free and not in jail while you're doing the stuff. They will put up bail, and it's going to again depend on how bad the crime you're doing is. That will affect the purchase DC there. There's bribery. There's a list of basic bribes for different people. This can alter depending on the person itself, but this is the normal target number you're going to think about. You'll probably want to talk to your game master to see the actual number, but this is basically how much you're going to probably have to bribe most people. There's legal services. This is paying for someone to help you out, like a lawyer or something. Now, this one's purchase DC has a base number, and it is increased depending on the skill of the lawyer you're hiring. So the better the lawyer you get, the more expensive it is to purchase this. Similarly is medical services. Now this actually has two things which affect how expensive the purchase DC is. The first is what kind of thing you're getting. Are you just getting a checkup? Are you getting surgery? Certain things are more expensive than others. After that, you add in the person who's doing its medical expertise as a increase to that DC. So effectively how skilled they are increases it after that amount. So not only do you choose a base amount, but however skilled you're being looked after, that increases it. So now let's move on and talk about vehicles, because this is another important thing. These are your cars, your boats, your planes that you're going to use to get around in the world. You can't just take taxis and trains everywhere. Well, maybe you can depending on the game, but oftentimes you want your own car or something like that make your character would fit along the lines of what your character would be. Now, vehicles have common statistics that I'm going to talk about. The first off is crew. These are how many people you're going to need to master and use your vehicle properly. Now, this does not necessarily mean that all the crew is critical. A crew, for example, a plane, it might say more than one, or for like a helicopter. You may only need one to actually crew the plane or the helicopter, or whatever vehicle it is. The extra people would be if there's a co-pilot, something like that, or maybe if there's a gunner on some kind of weapon that the vehicle has, if it's more lines of a military vehicle, then you might have a larger crew than would be necessary for it, but that would be the standard crew complement to use all the abilities of the craft. Just because you're a lone pilot doesn't mean you can do everything with the craft. You might have a harder time doing stuff with it, but you're still in control. Then is passengers. Now, passengers is the normal amount of people you can fit in it that aren't part of the crew. Granted, you can squeeze more people in there. You can take up whatever cargo space your vehicle has with people. An equivalent amount of, what it can carry to a number of people. Granted, any person in the cargo space is going to be uncomfortable, but you can switch that out. Now, in the reverse, it gives the amount of cargo your normal vehicle can carry. This is what it can normally secure safely and carry along. Again, you could take that cargo and put extra in the place of where passengers are, but then it's harder to secure that in that place. It might be loose, or it might just be piled on there. It's not really meant to have cargo there, but you can. Next up is initiative. This is how, when you're using this vehicle, your initiative bonus is modified. After that is maneuver. This is another number, but this one modifies your rolls and attempt to use the vehicle. Any kind of check you're using when driving or piloting the vehicle, you will be modified by the maneuverability of your vehicle. It, of course, will list your vehicle's speed. This is how fast it can go at maximum, the maximum speed it can go. Now, there might be two numbers, one normal number and a number in parentheses. If it has a number of parentheses, this is the number of squares. If you're using some kind of battle board, your vehicle can travel in the course of one combat turn. This can be a lot if you're in a very fast vehicle, but there are times and places where it might be important to make note of how many squares you're going, really, how much you're traveling in a single combat turn. So it's a good bit of information to actually know. It will list your vehicle's defense, how hard it is to hit, any kind of hit points it has, how much damage it can take. Its hardness. Hardness functions that whenever an attack would deal damage to your vehicle, you subtract an amount from that damage equivalent to the hardness that your vehicle has. So hardness is the amount that it absorbs damage directly that's being dealt to it automatically without having to do anything. It basically absorbs an amount of hits just for being the vehicle itself. Their size. Size does not work like the size of any other piece of equipment. Size is equivalent to what a size of a person or a size of a creature would be. So your vehicle, if it says it's medium, it's the size of a person. If it says it's large, it's more like a horse. If it says it's a huge vehicle, it's probably more like an elephant. It's very big. It increases in size and it becomes a much bigger vehicle and is equivalent to, as I said, living things-based size categories. Now, of course, it does give a purchase DC and a restriction, if it would be restriction, for example, getting a military vehicle. So let's move on from talking about equipment, because we just finished up, and begin diving into talking about combat. Now, combat is played in rounds, which each of the rounds is effectively a cycle that every player gets to act within. Well, not just every player, everything that's participating in said combat does. So the players, the enemies, anything else that is participating, they will be put into this cycle that they will redo this cycle in these rounds. Now, there are a number of steps when determining the beginning and effectively using combats. The first is everyone's going to be flat-footed at the beginning of it. Until you act on your turn, on any turn that you're acting, you are considered flat-foot. You are considered open. You are diving into this battle and you are sort of ready for it, but not quite. But as soon as you act, you are ready. You've prepared yourself. The second is we have to think about surprise. Now, there might be no surprise. Both sides might be surprised. In this case, things are going to act just sort of normally, but as soon as there's a number of creatures that are surprised, a number of creatures that are not, you're determining this, then you have to worry about it because then you roll initiative. You roll initiative for only those people that are not surprised. So that's what it is. If everybody's not surprised, or just some people aren't surprised, you roll initiative for them. If everybody's surprised, you kind of skip this step and go on to the next one. It does the exact same thing as if everybody was not surprised. Everybody rolls initiative. On the first round, if there are a mixture of surprised and not surprised characters, someone that is not surprised may act, but they can only do a move or a standard action. They can't do anything else. They have to choose between those two on their round that they are not surprised. Then, after the surprise goes, then you roll initiative for everyone else. So we've had this surprise. We've figured out who is surprised, who's not. We roll initiative to fill everything else out. And again, big note, if everybody's surprised or no one is surprised, you just roll initiative for everyone. You basically go to this third step. Fourth step is you start with the person with the highest initiative and then go from highest to lowest, each taking your action, doing whatever you want to do on your turn. Anybody that would be still flat-footed would lose that when they would act now. The people that acted on their surprise round, of course, lost their flat-footedness when they acted. Once this is all done, you move on to the last step, which is you move back up, and the first person that acted now acts again. And then you repeat the last two steps of everyone goes down from highest to lowest, then you go back up to the top. So it would be highest initiative, lowest initiative, back up to the top, highest initiative, lowest initiative, and you keep repeating this for every combat round you need until victory was assured by one side or the other, regardless if that means killing everybody or just routing the enemy, or whatever else form of victory you think would be appropriate in this case. So that's it for today. I finished talking about equipment with talking about lifestyles, talked about the services you get, and vehicles. I moved into talking about the basics of combat and talking about the effectiveness of whatever the steps that are important to a combat and understanding its sequence of events that's going to go by. In the next episode, I'm going to move into combat more and start talking about some of the common terms that are in combat and some of the basics you're going to have to know to understand how it functions and how it works. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show extra support, you can always check out the link to my Patreon down below, if you want to. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.